Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals, welcome back to my channel, and today I wanted to go over everything furniture for the release of patch 6.1. This will go over things that you should craft, things you should definitely stockpile, flippable items, and things you should avoid. I also have another video all about exteriors and a more condensed version of what you should do for 6.1. If you're interested in those videos, I will link them down below, or you can click up above. But with that being said, let's get into it. So, what type of furniture should we be looking for? Well, mainly there are three types of housing items: the inside housing items, outside housing items, and interiors and exteriors. All three are going to be viable this patch, which is awesome because previously only inside furniture was really viable, since most people only really had an apartment or an FC room, or to those who already have a home, they usually don't decorate the outside as much as the interior. But now everything is going to be viable because 100+ homes are going to be added to the housing system. Now for inside, think of partitions, plants, windows, lighting, and fish tanks. Now fish tanks and all these things might seem a little bit random, but if you can go ahead and take a look at some housing discords, a lot of people use these items most commonly in their builds. And of course, I'll go into the specific items in just a bit. For outside, think of trees and plants, water type furnishings, and lighting. So there's a lot of stuff and clutter that I wouldn't really recommend because the usage is pretty niche, and we're instead targeting what's being bought most often and for quite a bit. And the best thing about a lot of these items is that you don't need a max level crafter to craft these, and you don't even have to be at a high level at all. And the investment for these pieces are usually pretty cheap. But first, I do recommend the white rectangular partition. Even now, without the release of a new housing district, it is being bought often and a lot at a time. It is relatively cheaper than the rest of this list on my server, but of course, go ahead and take a look what is best on your server with each of the items that I will list. Also, if you're interested in a commonly used furniture list, it'll be down below. It is a Teamcraft list as usual, under the resources section. Next up are the imitation windows. You can just type imitation and you'll find all of the windows easily that way. But of course, just like the rectangular partition, people buy many at a time, and it is quite cheap, and it doesn't sell for a ton, but you're selling 10 at a time. Next up are the aquariums, and specifically I would target the Tier 4 aquarium, but not the metal one, the one crafted with woodworking. People use this in terms for lighting or other things, and the Tier 4 aquarium that is made by the woodworker does not have any embellishments on the rim, so it's way better for housing, and it's bought more often. And this is also quite expensive right now, but as you can see, it usually sells for around 100k, but it's still pretty good for the investment needed. The leather sofa is also extremely good for the investment needed. It is an amazing amount of profit, and you sell so many at a time. And again, this is good now, but it's going to be even better later. Next up is the wall planter and the old rose wall planter. Both these are super good and are bought quite often, and just as many plants are bought very often. Of course, if you're a lower level alchemist, then go ahead and target the wall planter, but if you're level 80, you can go ahead with the wall planter and the old rose wall planter. And the three last pieces that I do recommend for inside furnishing are the wooden sets, specifically the wooden loft, the wooden steps, and the wooden handrail. Now, a lot of these are basic pieces for a house. People buy a lot at a time very often, and of course later on it's going to be very good. Now we can go on with the outside furnishing and what I recommend specifically. First up is the garden gravel. Now this is not craftable, this is from scripts, specifically gathering scripts. Then the brick paving, which is craftable by alchemist. Then the glade gazebo, the Eomag garden fountain, the Dravanian down tree, and both the regal letterbox and the Mughal letterbox are also very good because every house needs a mailbox. And that's it for the outside furnishing. of course, take a look at the list that I will put down below for outside furnishing. There are many more that I haven't listed, and you could also find some things that are even better than what I've shown here, or something maybe better on your server than on mine. And there are so many needed pieces that if we really sat down and listed everything, this video would be 30 minutes long. So of course, do go ahead and take a look at the list. Now, some items for the interior. First up is the leafy ceiling lamp, then the skylight chandelier, and the diamond chandelier. For flooring, the varied wood flooring is pretty good, the unfinished wood flooring, and for walls, the unfinished interior wall, the solid brick interior wall, and the unfinished interior wall. Now we can go into vendor flipping. There are so many pieces from the vendor that people don't really realize it's from a vendor, but as you can see, people are buying this up to 40k, when in reality, you could buy this from the vendor for 5k only. But that's not the only one that is viable. The wooden footbridge is also pretty good. The marble partition is exceptional, and with houses coming along, people able to garden finally, the deluxe garden patch will be exceptional to go ahead and flip from the vendor. Again, this is selling for 73,000 gil when you can buy it for 48k gil. It is more of an expensive vendor price, but still you're making 30k profit just like that. And finally, the mannequin is also pretty good. For a 10k price at the vendor, you can sell it for around 50 to 60k. So what should you start stockpiling? There are actually quite a few things that you should go ahead and consider to stockpile. First off, tombstone items. Now, specifically, you should already be spending your allegories on tombstone items for the new crafting gear that'll come with this patch. But for tombstones of poetics, I recommend not spending your poetics on these. Buy this instead off the market board, because usually things like Scarlet Orochi is around 10 poetics per one, but you can buy it off the market board for 100 gil per. And specifically, look what's being bought out the most. Terrain lumber is one thing for the imitation window, which I know will be used in so many builds that will be coming around with the new homes. Also, take a look at the Grand Company items as well. Something like wolfram ingots are going to be selling exceptionally well because it's used in so many furniture recipes, and scheelite is also pretty expensive depending on what server you're on. Of course, for the amount of gil, I would instead just buy it with Grand Company seals. I would also stockpile on seeds. Now gardening is available to many more people, and they're going to be wanting to get into the Daviouxx and glaze nut farm. Now, Daviouxx and glaze nuts are already expensive as it is, but the seeds are also expensive as well, so go ahead and buy a few of them out to flip them later on. And remember, Daviouxx and glaze nut requires a seed to cross-pollinate to maintain the efficiency of you consistently receiving Daviouxx. It's a little bit confusing because gardening is confusing, but basically, if you're gonna plant Daviouxx, you also need mandrake seeds. And I will link down below the Final Fantasy gardening site, so you can go ahead and see what Daviouxx requires, what glaze nut requires, and see what seeds you should buy out, and also what soil is needed to plant these seeds. It's also very good if you do plan on starting to garden. It is quite a bit of a chore, but the amount of money that you can make off of it is pretty good. The next thing you should stockpile is housing items that are not from crafting, gathering, or scripts. These will of course be down below along with the other stockpiles, but something to keep in mind especially is the verdant partition. And last but not least, the dyes. Now, especially dyes, they're going to be used in furniture, and you're going to need a lot of them if you're putting a lot of furniture in your home, and specifically the soot black dye, the snow white dye, and a lot of browns and beiges are going to be pretty good. You can also buy these from vendors, so you can also make a flippable profit that way. So what should you avoid when looking for furniture and stuff for the interior to sell? Well, personally, I would avoid a lot of clutter items because some of them are very niche, but that doesn't mean that all of them are bad. There are some exceptionally good clutter items that of course are in the list down below, but pay attention to what you're crafting and make sure that people buy a lot of it at a time, or for it to be expensive enough for it to warrant only a few purchases each week. I would also avoid most interiors and flooring. A lot of them don't really look that great, but for the ones that do sell and sell well, of course, target those instead. So that was a whole load of furniture items that you should be looking out for the patch. 6.1. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so sorry that my ears have been clipping the entire video. I didn't realize until an hour in recording. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. And thank you to everyone that supports me on Twitch, Discord, and YouTube, and our lovely YouTube members. You all keep the channel going. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye!